Take a look around. Nature is awesome. It's great for inspiring patterns, textures, illustrations, artwork, but we don't always have access to nature all the time. Maybe you live in a big city and green spaces are harder to come by. Or maybe you live in upstate New York like me and there is a very long winter dormant period for plants. Or maybe you just don't have enough space to grow a big, lush garden. So what can we do? Well, we can plant a container garden. Hi, I'm Lauren Weber, artist, designer, and horticulturalist from upstate New York. I studied landscape architecture and plant sciences at Cornell University. After graduating, I interned at Disney with their amazing horticulture team. Talk about a magical experience. Then I spent 8 years growing plants, caring for plants, and doing floral design work at a local mom and pop shop closer to home before I started my own business, Garden Girl Studio. And now I get to share my plant and design knowledge with you. Now is your opportunity to get growing. So if you're ready to get started, let's dig in. In this lesson, we're going to talk about watering strategies and water management with our container garden. One of the most common questions that I would hear when I was working in the garden center and the growing positions that I worked in is, how much water does this need? And well, it's a very simple and common question, but the answer is it really depends. So I want to talk you through some different scenarios and dynamics so that we can talk about how much water your plants may need. The amount of water that your plant needs not only depends on the type of plant you have, but also its environmental conditions, the light conditions, the temperature conditions, and the air conditions of your container's environment. So let's unpack that. If your plant is in a full sun, high heat environment, it will likely need more water than a plant that is going to be in full shade and in cooler temperatures. If I have a 120 Fahrenheit summer day, my plants may need water not only once, but maybe twice that day. On a cooler day, water transpires more slowly, and plant systems tend to slow down. So these are all factors when you're thinking about how much water your plant is going to be using. If your plant is indoors, it's going to be similar factors. If your plant is in a bright sunny window, it may use more water than a plant that is in a really shady location within your home. Or if your plant is kept in a really cold room, it's probably going to drink a lot less than the plant that's kept in a really hot, warm room. Other things to think about are your air conditions. So wind, air vents, any sort of blowing system is going to dry out your plants faster, meaning they're going to need more water. And even with all of these factors in mind, some plants are just simply thirstier than others. Some plants just need more water. So how do we deal with all of these variables? The truth is it's going to take a little bit of work. Not a lot, just a little bit. In the first few weeks that you have your plants, I'm going to recommend that you check on your plants once, maybe even twice a day, depending on how much heat and how much light your plants are getting. How do you check on your plants? Well, let's talk about a couple soil tests. You're going to look at the color of the soil, and you're going to feel the soil to see if it feels wet. So the color of the soil changes as it dries out. Take a look at these pots. Do you see how the soil changes based on saturation? In the pot all the way to the left, you can see this soil doesn't have an ounce of water. Its soil structure is vastly different than the pot all the way to the right. And in fact, its color is vastly different too. You can see this pot all the way to the left that doesn't have an ounce of water in it is not only grayer in color, it's desaturated. The soil is even separating from the edge of the pot. You can see it's dustier. Now that is the max dry level that this soil can be at. Now in the pot all the way to the right, the soil is rich in color. It is saturated. Particles aren't dusty. They are looking glossy, almost oversaturated, okay? So you'll notice the rich black color. This may be even a little bit too damp. So you're gonna wanna choose soil that is just damp. And you can use a visual to kind of see that you want your soil color to be a little bit richer, and throughout the week, you can see the soil is gonna start to lighten in color. So if you see that your soil is starting to be a light color, or if it's separating from the pot, it's definitely time for a drink. Okay, so you can use the color and the structure of the soil as indicators for when it's time to water your plant. The other factor is feeling the soil. Does it feel damp? I know it seems messy and muddy, but I will just feel the soil in the pot to see how saturated it is. If the soil is still damp, I'm probably okay. I don't need to water right away. I'll check it again either later or the following day. The other thing to look at is, how does your plant look? You'll start to develop what I would like to call plant eyes. As you start getting your plant eyes, you'll actually start to see how your plants themselves respond to water. You can look at the color of the leaves, and you'll notice that some leaves start out gray, but leaves that are naturally a saturated deep green When they're dry, they're gonna start turning a little less saturated and they'll be a little bit more gray. It's subtle, but it's a good indication that your plant may need some water. I've seen plants come to me that are too wet that are also drooping and they're wilting. So wilt is not always an indication of not enough water. It can also indicate too much water. It's definitely an indication that there's probably a water or temperature issue, but it's sometimes hard to determine what that wilt's being caused by. So as you check on your plants once or twice a day, you'll start to notice how much water they're using. Once you know how much water your plant is using, you can back off on check-ins a little bit. But I want you to keep in mind, if a variable changes, you should go back to checking on your plant or your container regularly. So if the temperatures start to drop, or if you have a heat wave coming, or if there's a really windy day, make sure you go check on your plants to see if they need water, because there's a chance that they used more or less depending on the day. Or maybe you had a giant rainstorm and your plants are overly saturated. You may need to pull them out of the rain for a little while just so that they can desaturate so they don't start to rot. So make sure if your weather conditions, light, temperature, air conditions change, that you are adapting to make sure that you're meeting the needs of your plants. Okay, so cool. We've determined that our plants need water. Let me give you a few recommendations that you can keep your plants and blooms in tip-top shape as you're watering. So most of these plants that we're working with here, they want water at their base. Now, if you water them from the top, sometimes that can damage the blooms on your plants. So water can create damage on plants, either start rotting petals, or you can have a bit of burn from the sun or heat. I'm going to recommend that you try to water below your blooms when possible. So you can take either your watering can or your hose or a cup of water, and even if you have to kind of tuck your blooms to the side or snuggle the nozzle of your hose or your watering can into the edge or deeper into your pot so that you're not impacting the blooms from the top. So make sure that you give your plants a good drink. Now, what is a good drink? Look at the root ball basically on your plants, right? How much water would it take to saturate that soil? Now, again, you don't want to overwater, but especially on a hot day, the soil is going to drain and you want to make sure that your plants get a good drink. If I just give a really quick drink to these plants, the water is not going to soak into the deepest depths of the roots and the plant's not going to have enough water. So visually try to see, if you have a container, how much water would it take to fill that container, knowing that you want to make sure that all of the roots get enough water so that your plant has enough resources to grow and thrive. And again, there will always be exceptions. Obviously, cacti and succulents aren't going to need water as frequently or as often, but they do occasionally still need a drink. And any flowers that are in blooms are probably going to be using a few more resources and will need water, including cacti and succulents. They will need a smidge more water than normal. So keep an eye on your plants, make sure you're doing your tests and checking on them to make sure that they have adequate resources so they can continue blooming, thriving all season long. Now, how do you tell if something may be wrong with your watering? Well, I like to do the mushy crunchy test, and I'll just touch on this quickly. But if you notice that your plants are starting to drop leaves, or there may be an issue, or if you're facing wilt, I want you to check to see if those wilting leaves or those falling leaves are crunchy or mushy. If they're crunchy, likely your plant is either in too much sun, has too much heat, or does not have enough water. If those leaves are mushy, likely your plant either has not enough sun, is in too cold temperatures, or is facing too much water. So these are factors to kind of start working with as you're trying to figure out what may be wrong with your plants. Again, there could be a ton of reasons why your plant is starting to turn, but it's usually one of these three conditions, temperature, light, or water, that your plant is facing. So it's a good place to start and make your small adjustments before your planter takes a real turn.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.